Hi, welcome everyone to the City of Alameda's Facade Grant webinar. My name is Amanda Gerke. I'm with the City of Alameda, and I'm joined by Annie Cox, who will also be working on the Facade Grant program. So I do have some slides to share with you all. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. All right, and just so everyone knows, we are doing today's presentation in webinar format. If you have questions, please go ahead and put them in the Q&A box or in the chat function, and we will address any and all questions. So I already introduced myself and Annie. One thing I wanted to note is that Annie and I are both going to be working on this program, and there is going to be a third person who's going to be coming into the program in a couple of months. So one thing we're doing a little differently this year is we're asking everyone to use the email address facadegrant@alamedaca.gov to make sure that we have continuity for the program as different folks are working on that. So Annie is going to go ahead and drop that into the chat. So the webinar, first I'm going to go talk a little bit about the program and how it works. Then we'll talk about the application process, kind of next steps and how reimbursement works. And then we'll have plenty of time for Q&A at the end. So this slide lists the main goals of the Facade Grant program. This program was really intended to help visually improve our city's storefronts and sort of commercial streetscapes. So these are the four goals of the program, and they're also the four evaluation criteria that the Facade Grant Committee uses when they are evaluating your application. So these are kind of things to keep in mind. So they're looking at, does it make a visual improvement? Is it enhancing a prominent business location? Is it filling a previously vacant storefront? And then they also look at projects that rehabilitate or replace historic features. The way the program works is it's a 50-50 matching grant program. So basically you pay for half the cost of the improvements and the city pays for the other half of it. It is a reimbursement program, so you pay upfront and then we reimburse you after the work is completed. There are 3 levels of grants. The first level, level 1, provides a matching grant amount up to $5,000, and that's for awnings and signs. So basically the way that works is if the maximum amount is up to $5,000. So to get the full $5,000, you would need to spend $10,000. You do not have to buy a $10,000 sign. We give grants as small as a few $100s. Level 2 is up to $10,000. This is for paint and signs that are marquee or large scale or neon. And then level 3 is for architectural improvements such as windows, cornices, trim, doors, kind of our larger and more expensive improvements. This year, we do have a special, as we do for the last few years. We are offering a special on murals. So for murals, the city will grant up to 80% of the cost of the work, up to $10,000. So in this case, we pay 80%, you pay 20%, and then the maximum grant amount is $10,000. We would ask for a conceptual drawing of the mural as part of the application packet. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to my colleague, Annie, who's going to give you all a few examples of different facade grants in the city.
Thank you, Amanda. So one of the things that we wanted to do is just share with you some of the things that businesses have been able to do with the different levels. So this is these are 2 examples of level 1 facade grants, and they are basic signs, one at Lola's on Park Street and one at the Frank Bett Center of the Arts.
Sorry, of course, now I'm having technical difficulty. Here we go.
And here's another example of a level 1 facade grant, and this was for awnings, and it's nice to see here. You can see the before and the after. So this improvement was for the replacement of the awning. And here we have an example of a level 2 facade grant. This was for painting the exterior of this of 1301 High Street. And you can see that it was both the ground level as well as the upper level. And here are two more examples of large-scale marquee signs and a mural, and those qualify as level 2 facade grant improvements. So the Star on Park added a marquee, and Julie's Coffee and Tea Garden added a mural that extended across the front and side of their building. And then this is an example of a more extensive level 3 facade grant that was where there were some significant architectural changes that were made. And you can see the before and the after of Phnom Penh on Webster Street. And they were able to take down and restore the original architectural elements. Thanks, Amanda. I'll turn it back over to you.
All right, thank you, Annie. Okay, so in terms of location and which buildings are eligible for the grant, so this grant is really primarily intended for retail, restaurant, service, or theater businesses, or commercial properties that have these types of businesses. So anywhere on the island, these types of businesses or the properties that house them are eligible for the grant. Other types of commercial businesses like offices are eligible on a case-by-case basis, but in that case, we ask that they be located in one of our kind of key commercial districts. So that includes Webster Street Business District, Downtown Alameda Business District, one of the city's historic station areas. And what we mean by that are back in the streetcar days, the streetcars ran up and down the island, and they had at each stop little miniature commercial districts sprung up. And you guys are probably familiar with some of these locations now, like at Bay Street. So it would need to be located in one of those locations, one of the city's gateways. So that's at one of the entrances, the tube or the tunnels, or the Naval Air Station Historic District. And if you have any questions about whether your location is eligible, please reach out to that facade grant email address, and Annie or I will work with you to determine your eligibility. I think we've gone through already what a lot of the eligible improvements are. One thing I do want to note is that right now, parklets are not an eligible use of the facade grant program. And by parklets, I mean the eating and drinking and outdoor retail areas that have been located in the public parking spaces as part of the city's commercial streets program. The reason for this is because that program is scheduled to end at the end of, I believe it's the end of October. City Council will be considering a renewal of that program. And if they do, then we will reconsider the facade grant program for parklets. It can, however, be used for outdoor eating areas that are on other properties. So other requirements, you need to be an owner of or a tenant within a proposed project. And if you are a tenant, the owner needs to be on board with your project. And we do need a signature from the owner to show that they know about the project and approve of it. Here's a really important thing to note. Both owners and tenants can apply for one property. So for example, if you're a new business and you're moving into a building and you want to do a lot of improvements, everything from signs and paint to architectural improvements, and it's going to cost way more than our maximum grant amount of $30,000. The business owner can apply for a level 1 or 2 grant. So for $5,000 or $10,000, and then the property owner can separately apply for a larger grant, and then those grants can be combined to fund larger improvements. So if that's something you're interested in talking more about, please let us know. We're happy to talk about that. And then finally, each property or business may only receive a grant every 5 years. I guess I would note the only exception to that is if there's a new business that comes into a property, that business can be eligible for a facade grant sooner than 5 years if it is a new business. So This is just kind of a step-by-step how the program process works. We first ask everyone to review our Facade Grant Program guidelines. That document can be found, I believe Annie put into the chat, a link to our Facade Grant Program website. Attending this webinar is also a good start because I'm going over a lot of the information that's in those guidelines. We also ask that you meet with economic development staff to talk about your project. Those folks who are attending this webinar, we won't need to go in as much detail with you all, but we do like to understand a little bit more about the work that you're proposing. Ideally, we would do these meetings on site so that we can kind of take a look at the facade and talk through the improvements. If you are not comfortable with that, we are happy to set up a remote meeting to go over your plans. After you've met with staff, you submit a completed application. Usually around 2 to 3 weeks after each deadline, the Facade Grant Committee will meet to review the applications, and then we usually let people know within a couple of days of that meeting. We will give you notification of the grant award if you are awarded a grant. We will ask for some follow-up information, an acceptance of the grant, W-9 form, that kind of thing. You will be required to get your planning, building, and encroachment permits. So that's one thing that people have been unsure of in the past. They've thought that possibly they don't need to get permits if they have a facade grant, but unfortunately you do need to get those permits. The good news is the facade grant can be put towards those permit costs. So as part of your facade grant application, we will work with you to estimate your permit costs and then add that to your grant amount. And then finally, when you have all your permits, you complete the work, you can submit for reimbursement. So the things that we're looking for there are the work must be completed, all your final permit inspections must be complete, and then we have some specific paperwork we'll ask for. I'll talk more about that in a minute. So then now I'm going to talk a little bit about the application process itself. So in the link that Annie provided, there's a spot where you can download the application itself, and that includes this checklist here of what the elements are. So the first item on this is the project information and signature page, very straightforward. The only thing that can be a little tricky on this is we do need the signature of the property owner. So we either need a hard copy of that signature, which can be mailed to our offices or delivered by hand, or we can use a DocuSign. And the rest of this presentation will go through this checklist, so I won't go through it all now. Existing conditions photos, this is something you don't have to worry about. We will take these photos, but just wanted to let you know, one of the things we do in the beginning of the process is document what's happening now at your facade. And then these also become the before photos for our before and after shots. We ask you to fill out a scope of work. There is an example of this and a template for this in the application that you can use. There's also, you're able to download a Word version of this application from our website. And basically what we're looking for here is, for some of you, if you're just doing a sign or an awning or something simple, this is a really simple process. You just write the one thing you're doing, a description of it, what the estimated cost is. What we do ask, especially for folks who are doing larger projects, is we really want an itemized list of everything you're planning to do so that the Facade Grant Committee can really understand the full scope of what you're planning to do and then what the costs are of individual items. So it might look something like this example here, paint, awning, sign, light fixtures. And one of the reasons we do this is that sometimes the Facade Grant Committee has to make difficult decisions based on limited funding. So there are times when they will fund part of your grant, but not all of the grant. Vendor estimate. So we are looking for an estimate for the work that you're planning to do. You are not then required to use this company, but we do need a reliable estimate. This is how we know how much money to give you. Graphic representation of proposed work. So this is actually the most important part, I would say, of your grant application. As I mentioned before, this program is really all about improving the visual aesthetic of your property or of your business. So the Facade Grant Committee is going to be looking very closely at your design and the aesthetic qualities of it. So you can include this example from Lola's. It looks like that's the finished sign, but this was actually a photo representation that they put together. It can be schematic drawings, conceptual sketches. One thing I do ask is that you include as much detail as possible, both in the graphic representation and in your scope of work. Because when we take these before the Facade Grant Committee to review the applications, they have a million questions always. And what we don't want to have happen is to have to pause your application while I come back and get more information. So one thing you'll notice is when you submit your application, I might be, or Annie might, or whoever might be coming back to you with follow-up questions. And that's really just because we want to make your application as complete as possible and make sure that we kind of set you up for success with the Facade Grant Committee. So samples of, materials. This one is optional, it's not required, it's not relevant for every project, but sometimes we do have people submit actual physical materials, like an example of siding or something like that they want the committee to see in person. Another way that people use this is, if they haven't picked out the exact light fixture they want, but they have kind of a style idea, they can submit sort of almost a vision board of what they're thinking of for the look. Oftentimes in those situations, the Facade Grant Committee will issue what we call a conditional award. And that's when they say, we want to give you the money, we're holding the money, but we want to see a final design before, you get the final grant award. So I just want to be clear that sometimes we do conditional awards. The other situation that happens with is if there's some element of the design that the Facade Grant Committee doesn't like or wants to see changed. So sometimes they will do this conditional award where they ask you to come back with a change to your design, and then the work can't be completed until they have approved the final design. So these are our 4 deadlines for this fiscal year. One thing I will say is that they're often, as I mentioned, we often ask a lot of follow-up questions. So I highly recommend getting in your applications early so that we have a little bit of time for back and forth and asking you questions and making sure your application is complete. If you submit, if you wait till the absolute day of the deadline and your application is incomplete, we can't guarantee that we would be able to take that application as part of that round, and it would get pushed to the next round. So I'm going to go, I have a very quick slide about next steps, and then we'll go into the Q&A. So as I mentioned, once you get your Facade Grant Award, you do need to get all of your permits, complete the work, final the permits. And then what we need for reimbursement is a final invoice from your contractor, proof of payment. So that can be a copy of a cash check, credit card statement, that kind of thing. We also do request a lien release with your contractor, but that is optional. That is kind of up to you if you want to provide that. And I guess another thing I would add here is that if you are planning to do the work yourself, then the program will only pay for materials. We don't pay for the labor of the grantee. And then once we have all of your documents, we'll reimburse within 30 days of having the improved documentation. So that takes us to the end. I am going to stop sharing my screen and see what we have in terms of questions.
We do have one question that came in.
Oh, great.
The question is, if our business received a grant within the last 5 years, but we're moving to a new location, are we eligible? Or should the building owner and the new location apply?
That is a great question. I suspect that you would probably need the building owner at the new location to apply, but I would like to double check on that. And I see the person who submitted that question and I have your email address. So I will follow up with you and let you know. Oh, here's someone asking if an outdoor space is eligible within the property. So the space would need to be considered part of the facade of the building. If that outdoor space is fully visible from the sidewalk and the street, then it might be considered. If it's tucked away and not visible from the street, it would not be eligible. And if you're not sure, if it's somewhere in between, reach out to us and we will come out and take a look and let you know. So I see someone's here asking, can we apply as a nonprofit with permission of the building owner, or would the building owner need to apply? You can apply with permission of the building owner, or the building owner can apply. Either way works, but definitely, you know, tenants or other folks can apply. They do need that building owner signature. Other questions? Oh, I see someone with a raised hand here. I'm gonna, Tara, I think I know you put your question in the Q&A. I am gonna allow you to talk in case there's something else you wanted to ask. So Tara, you are unmuted.
It was just to clarify that we are obviously not a tenant in any way related to the business as a non-profit applying. Is that a problem? Do we need to make sure that somebody who's actually in the building, obviously the non-profit wants to do it as a placemaking element, and it would be the facade of a commercial building. Do the people running the commercial building need to fill in this application, or can we do it as a placemaking activity? Does that make sense?
Yeah, and I hear this, and I think Tara is specifically asking about murals on buildings.
Yes,
that's right. Yeah. So I think what's going to be important to us is to know that the building owner is fully on board and understanding, of the mural. And that could take the form of them filling out the application. It could also be a letter that accompanies your application. So I think there's a few ways to handle that, but that would be our key concern.
Okay.
Anything else, Tara?
Yes, just actually while we're talking about murals, is there anything specific in the conditions and the stipulations about length of life of the mural and sort of rights to the artwork, the legalities of who owns the artwork once it's on the building and how long it needs to stay there? Is there anything that you guys are specifically asking for?
So our intention is to treat this as we treat other facade improvements, which is, you pay for it, we reimburse you, and we are very hands-off with the work from then on. But Tara, you raised a very good question, and I'm going to double check on that. And I will let you know.
Great, thanks.
All right, Tara, unless you have something else, I'm going to mute you, and then I see we have another question.
Mute me.
Okay. So John, you have a question? John, I'm going to ask you to unmute.
Okay, can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay, I'm already applied for the planning for 2 neon signs, and I have approval from the planning. I'm in the process of getting a approval from the building department. I have not paid any money yet. I don't have the final things yet, and I'm waiting for the contractor to give me the details on the encroachment permit. Can I still apply for the grant, even though I'm in the process?
Yes, absolutely. The only thing that we don't allow is for work that has already, if the physical work has started or been completed, that you couldn't apply for the grant, but it is totally fine if you are already in the permit application process.
In the process,
yes.
Yeah. When can I set up an appointment?
Reach out to the email address that Annie put into the chat, and we will schedule something as soon as possible.
Okay, thank you very much.
All right, thank you, John. And just to follow up on the answer to that question, I think the only thing we would ask is that the work not start until the facade grant committee has reviewed your application and made a decision. Other questions? can put your hand up or drop something in the chat or the Q&A. I see that John and Tara still have their hands up, but I'm wondering if that is the same. Aha, Brendan. Okay, their hands are down. Brendan, I'm gonna unmute you.
Hi.
Hello.
Can you hear me? Okay. This is Rebecca, actually. I was just wondering, so we've already done a substantial amount of work on our coffee shop that we're opening on Webster Street. So with that, I'm a little unclear if we were told or thought that we could apply after the work has been completed with receipts. I don't know if we're able to do that at this point. I'm a little confused.
Yeah, that's a good question. And I'm afraid the answer is that once the work has been completed or even started, we can't include it in the facade grant program. If there are elements you have not completed yet, we can work with you on those, and I'd be happy to.
Okay. I mean, there is signage that we still need to do, but we have painted the front of the building. We've done an awning. So that's ineligible, you're saying?
Yeah, those would be ineligible, but definitely contact us about the signage, and we'll see what we can do to get you through the process as quickly and smoothly as possible.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Other questions? And Rebecca, I see your hand is still up. Were you, don't know if you have it. Okay, it is down now. All right, well, I'm afraid my colleague Annie had to run, but I appreciate all of you attending this webinar today. And I'm going to put the facade grant email address in the chat once again, because this is, we are really here to help you through this process. Our goal is to make this as painless as possible for our small business owners who have been through so much already this year. So please reach out to us with any questions, and we look forward to working with you. Thanks.